curious, in your experience, you have interviewed many, many engineers over the course of your career. Are there any things that people wouldn't intuitively know to prepare for? And are there any qualities that you've seen that are automatic deal breakers or deal makers when you interview someone?
Oh gosh, deal makers. I don't think that there are any deal makers personally. I know that a lot of interviewers look for different things in candidates. They like to see different things. And this provides data and can weigh in the decision for a specific interviewer. Like I know some managers love to see candidates who are hyper excited about something, right? Who really show an interest in the company and something which is unique to that company that they want to hear from the candidate. This is one I don't agree with, to be clear. But there are some people who have different viewpoints, like, this is what I want to see. And I hope that there's nothing that they see like that one thing and they're like, forget it, we're hiring the person. I have all these other yellow flags, or actually, I don't think they'll be technically successful in the role, but I see this thing and I'm going to hire them. And I don't think that exists. And I've never really seen it. Like I said, there are people who like some qualities who will weigh those more heavily, but no deal makers. There are almost no deal breakers in my viewpoint. There are things. There are things that people will hopefully, people who have had a lot of experience in interviewing will identify their pet peeves, the things that they see candidates do that that disproportionately impact and provide data and influence their decision. And the best interviewers will recognize it and say, this is one of my pet peeves. I'm not going to let it be a deal breaker. It's data, and it's valid data to help factor into the final decision, but it's the totality of all the data that I gather and my interpretation of all the things that I saw that make a final decision. So I don't think that there are any deal breakers. Well, let me change that. I think there are almost no deal breakers. There are some candidates. There are some things that you will see from time to time that are red flags, I think, and more than just a red flag. I guess it can become a deal breaker. So here's the one for me. And to be clear, I don't care if an interview candidate is adversarial with me. By adversarial, I mean they are viewing this as a competition between me and them. And this can manifest itself in a number of ways. And I just don't care, right? If a candidate is trying to impress me and then wants me to impress them and like maybe one up them, I will impress them. I'm going to go out of my way to impress them by making it clear how important it is to me that this is a good experience for them. And I'll impress them hopefully by asking thoughtful questions and by being like really invested in the whole process, right? I hope that will impress them. I don't view the interview as a competition between me and the candidate. And in general, I have techniques that I use in order to diffuse candidates who approach it in an adversarial way. So that's not a deal breaker for me. But if I'm a secondary in an interview, for example, if I'm there to observe a new interviewer who's just getting started with the interview process, and I see this behavior and it spirals into something very negative, then it's a deal breaker. And I had one situation where I was shadowing a new interviewer with the goal of providing, my goal is to assess the interviewer and to help them get better as time goes on. This interviewer, she really did her best to handle the situation well, but it went very, very poorly very quickly. And I stepped in and I drove the remainder of the time. I gave the interviewer an opportunity to take a couple of breaths and then just to sit and observe the remainder of the interview. But for the candidate, it was a no. And so that was a deal breaker for me. I mean, that was a hard pass.
Gotcha. I feel like that's very commendable. It kind of shows almost like a kind of a protective, like mama or papa bear or something like that. And you're like saying, like, if you want to play hardball with me, like, fine, let's do it. But like, we've got a new cub here and he's just like, they're just trying to learn how to do this. And you're like picking a competition with them. That's not going to fly in this house.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
interview candidates who take this adversarial position in an interview, sometimes as a defense mechanism, but sometimes not. Sometimes just like that's their personality. If you're a new interviewer and if you haven't had a ton of industry experience, and you're sitting in a room with an aggressive person who has done a lot of things, who has had a lot of experience, it can be a really difficult situation to handle well. And I don't think many people can do a good job at it. I don't think I would have done a good job at it like at the earlier point in my career. So yeah.
I certainly wouldn't feel good about at the receiving end of that. And more importantly, would make me think about like why this person thinks that's a good strategy going into an interview. Like if it's unconscious, that's scary to me because that probably reflects their personality. And if it's conscious, like kind of like what kind of ego or something that comes with that. So I feel like that would be a big red flag for me in an interview.
Yeah, yeah. And other interviewers, like other interviewers see things like arrogance as being like a huge red flag. I never saw it as being a huge red flag, and I never saw it as being a deal breaker, but there are other personality traits which can influence the end result of the interview.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay.